In this video, we'll look at getting started with Zuni iOS and Xcode. Before we get too far along, Zuni iOS has several requirements. First, it requires that we target iOS 7.1 or greater. It supports devices including iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch. Also, it requires that we use Xcode 5.1 or greater. In the rest of this video, we'll cover working with Zuni controls for iOS development, including adding Zuni Frameworks to an Xcode project and adding a Zuni radial gauge to a ViewController. Here I've opened a pre-existing Xcode project. To add Zuni controls to this project, we'll first need to add the Zuni Frameworks. To add the Zuni Frameworks, follow these steps. In the Project Navigator, select your project in the top left. Select the target, which you can show if it's hidden. You'll see a series of tabs across the top. Make sure General is selected. Near the bottom of this page is a section, Linked Frameworks and Libraries. You can add Zuni through here by either clicking the plus and selecting the frameworks from the machine, or you can drag and drop the frameworks from the Finder into this area. By default, Zuni will install into your Documents folder, and the path for the frameworks is Documents, Zuni, iOS, Controls. Now, if you're working on Xcode 7 or later, you also need to add the directory for the Zuni controls to your framework search paths. You can do that by following these steps. First, select your iOS project in the top left to bring up your project settings. Navigate to the Build Settings tab. Select the Search Paths group. Find the framework search paths and enter an absolute or relative path to the Zuni controls folder. Now, we have the Zuni controls added to the project, and the frameworks can be accessed on the left-hand side in the Project Navigator. We can expand the frameworks to reveal the headers that make up the elements of each control, and they can be used as a reference for what is available in the API. I'm going to be generating all of the controls and code today inside the ViewController. First, we'll want to open the ViewController implementation file and import some headers for the other frameworks and classes we will want to use. We'll import the Zuni framework headers by adding an import statement for Zuni Core Kit and Zuni Gauge Kit. I'll need to add a line of code to properly license the Zuni controls in this project. Now, I've already generated a key on the website and created a license class with this key, but I'll need to add a single line of code here so that it's properly licensed. If you have any questions about the licensing process, be sure to check out the iOS licensing video on this site. Now that the project's properly licensed, we'll add a couple lines of code to first instantiate the radial gauge, and then configure some basic properties like min, max, and value. Now that we've configured our control, we'll run the project to see what the output looks like. That's all for this Getting Started video for using Zuni iOS. For more information on Zuni, be sure to check out gozuni.com. Also, be sure to check out our other Getting Started videos, and stay tuned for new videos on Zuni and cross-platform mobile development.